The mission was simple on paper. Locate the long-lost weapon referred to in the sacred text of the Kevo Dominion. The text described it only as human, a name whispered in reverence and fear by countless generations. No one alive truly knew what it was. Some speculated it was an advanced war machine, others a super soldier program. But all agreed on one thing. Whatever human was, it had once tipped the balance of power across the galaxy. Zeker, a reconnaissance operative for the Dominion, led the expedition. Their team of scientists and warriors arrived at a derelict system on the outer rim, guided by ancient star charts and cryptic coordinates. The planet before them, Earth, was a wasteland. Its surface was a blend of scorched deserts, overgrown ruins, and radioactive scars, a world that had clearly witnessed its own demise. "Strange," muttered Dr. Vren, the team's historian, as they descended to the surface. "This world doesn't look like a forge for weapons. It looks abandoned." As they scoured the ruins, they found no signs of advanced technology, no massive factories or laboratories capable of producing galaxy-shattering devices. Instead, they discovered remnants of a civilization once vibrant and diverse, artifacts, monuments, and carvings depicting scenes of life, culture, and conflict. "Whatever happened here," Zeker said, kicking aside a piece of rubble, "it wasn't a war for glory. This was annihilation." Deeper exploration led them to an underground facility sealed by layers of protective barriers. After hours of cutting through metal and stone, they entered a vast chamber lined with rows of metallic capsules. Each capsule contained skeletal remains, their forms unlike anything the team had seen before. "This must be it," Vren whispered. "The humans." Zeker frowned. "These are biological remains. They're not weapons." "Perhaps they were the weapon," Vren suggested. As the team analyzed the remains, their scans uncovered something alarming: traces of genetic modifications and neural enhancements. Further digging into the facility's databanks revealed fragments of data, records of a project to enhance an already dangerous species. The logs described humans as relentless and adaptive, capable of surviving in the harshest conditions. Their ingenuity had turned even mundane tools into implements of destruction, and when united under a cause, they became nearly unstoppable. Their weapon, Zeker said, piecing it together, wasn't their technology. It was their will. A sudden tremor shook the facility. Alarms, dormant for centuries, sprang to life. The team scrambled as the chamber began to collapse, forced to abandon their research. They returned to their ship, orbiting high above the planet, to regroup and analyze the data they had retrieved. Before they could finish, their vessel's sensors detected movement. From the surface of Earth, signals began to light up, hundreds then thousands. The dormant planet was waking. The capsules, they realized, were not tombs but stasis chambers. "They're alive," Vren breathed. The team watched as the long-buried humans began to emerge from their slumber. Emaciated but alive, they stumbled into the sunlight for the first time in eons. Their eyes, glowing faintly from the enhancements described in the logs, surveyed the ruins of their world. Suddenly, a transmission pierced through the static on the comms. It wasn't from the humans, but from an old Dominion database. "Warning. If humans are discovered, initiate retreat. Under no circumstances engage." Zeker stared at the message, his heart pounding. What could a species, after all this time, still be capable of? They didn't have to wait long for an answer. As the first humans began to reorganize, salvaging ancient equipment and resources, they demonstrated a terrifying efficiency. Within hours, they had repaired machinery, restored energy grids, and rebuilt defensive structures. "This is no recovery," Zeker said. "This is a mobilization." The team debated their next move, but the decision was taken from them. A massive human-built cannon on the surface powered up, locking onto their ship. "They see us as a threat," Vren whispered. "Because we are," Zeker replied grimly. "And now they remember. The humans were not just relics of the past. They were a reminder of what sheer determination, unity, and adaptability could achieve. And as the first shot from Earth's surface grazed their shields, Zeker realized the truth. Humanity wasn't just a weapon of the past. It was the weapon of the future, and it was awake once more. The ship shook violently as a plasma round from Earth's surface exploded against its shields. Alarms blared through the bridge, and Zeker barked orders to his crew. Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of orbit. The pilot, a young navigator named Relic, struggled with the controls. They've already locked onto us. Their targeting systems are far more advanced than anything we detected. Another volley of plasma fire surged toward the ship. This time, the shields barely held, and Zeker felt the vessel lurch's systems began to fail. "We can't hold this position," Vren shouted, clutching the edge of a console as sparks erupted from nearby panels. Their infrastructure shouldn't even be functioning, let alone operating at this level of precision. "They are not rebuilding," Zeker said, his voice grim. "They are reclaiming." With a desperate heave, the ship broke free of Earth's orbit, retreating into the cover of a nearby asteroid field. The crew scrambled to assess the damage while Zeker stared out at the planet, now alive with a flicker of energy signatures and the movement of humans. "It doesn't make sense," Vren said, shaking her head as she pored over the data they had collected. "They've been dormant for millennia. Their civilization was wiped out. How can they be so coordinated already?" Zeker didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to the recovered logs from the facility. Scrolling through the fragmented records, he found what he was looking for, references to a failsafe embedded in human psychology. "They are not just biologically enhanced," he said finally. "They are hardwired for survival. Their instincts are sharper, their ability to adapt nearly instantaneous. This isn't a recovery effort. It's a response to a threat. Us." Relic turned from the helm, his face pale. "We have to warn the Dominion. If they see this as a challenge, they will," Zeker interrupted, "and they'll try to destroy them again. But can they?" Vren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zeker's silence was answer enough. Days later, the team ship limped back into Dominion space. Reports of their findings spread quickly, and within hours, high-ranking officials summoned them to a strategic council. The room buzzed with tension as Zeker presented his findings, detailing the humans' awakening and their rapid mobilization. "They are not a weapon we can control," he concluded. "If the Dominion tries to engage them, it will only reignite a conflict far beyond what we're prepared for." One of the council members, a stern-faced strategist, leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we do nothing? Allow a potential threat of this magnitude to grow unchecked?" "I'm suggesting we approach with caution," Zeker said. "If we antagonize them, we risk repeating the mistakes of our ancestors. Humanity's strength isn't in their weapons. It's in their ability to turn any situation, any disadvantage, to their favor. And if they attack first..." Zeker hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't believe they will. From what we observed, they only see us as a threat because of what we represent. If we show restraint, if we approach diplomatically..." "Diplomacy?" The strategist scoffed. "We're a species engineered for war. We're a species that remembers war," Zeker corrected, his voice firm. "And who may hate it as much as we do?" The council erupted into debate, but Zeker's words lingered. The humans were awake, and their presence could not be ignored. But whether they would be allies, enemies, or something in between was yet to be determined. Back on the bridge of his ship, Zeker stared at the distant stars, knowing that somewhere out there, the humans were watching, waiting. And he couldn't help but wonder, had they awakened too late to find peace, or just in time to ensure it? Weeks passed as the Dominion deliberated its next move. Scouts and covert probes were dispatched to monitor Earth, their findings feeding an ever-growing unease among the High Council. Reports painted a chilling picture. The humans weren't just rebuilding, they were advancing. The wreckage of ancient satellites had been repurposed into a defense grid. Crippled factories now churned with renewed life. manufacturing machines whose designs baffled even the most seasoned Dominion engineers. Most alarming were the signals. Encrypted messages bouncing between restored planetary installations, as if the humans were coordinating something far larger than the Dominion could fathom. Zeeker's warnings were increasingly ignored. The Council, driven by fear and arrogance, moved to consolidate its fleet's near-Earth sector. The goal was clear, a preemptive strike to eliminate the human threat before it could grow. Zeeker knew this was a mistake, but his protests fell on deaf ears. The Dominion had always believed in overwhelming strength, and they weren't about to let a long-dormant species challenge their dominance. When the first wave of Dominion warships entered Earth's orbit, they were greeted by silence. No weapons fired, no transmissions. It was as though the humans had abandoned their newly rebuilt defenses. The fleet commander, emboldened by the lack of resistance, ordered an orbital bombardment to begin. But the silence was a trap. The first volley of Dominion plasma rained down toward Earth, only to vanish mid-descent. Energy shields, far more advanced than anything the Dominion had ever seen, shimmered briefly over the planet's surface before fading again. Moments later, the humans answered. Small, agile craft launched from the planet's surface. They weren't traditional fighters. They were faster, equipped with weapons that bypassed Dominion's shielding entirely. They darted through the fleet, dismantling ships with surgical precision. Zeeker watched the battle unfold from a secure observation post on a nearby moon. His heart sank as he saw the Dominion fleet unravel. The humans didn't overwhelm with numbers or firepower. They outthought and outmaneuvered their opponents at every turn. Each move was calculated, each strike deliberate. Within hours, the once mighty fleet was in disarray. Some ships retreated, others floated lifelessly in the void. But the humans didn't pursue. They didn't destroy every vessel. They left just enough survivors to carry a message. The message came not in words but in action. We can defend ourselves. Leave us alone. When the battered remnants of the Dominion fleet returned, the Council was forced to reevaluate. Fear still dominated their discussions, but now it was mixed with uncertainty. The humans had shown restraint, a curious choice for a species engineered for war. Zeeker, summoned once again to provide counsel, faced a room of shaken officials. They didn't annihilate us, one counselor muttered. Why? Because they don't want war, Zeeker said simply. They've learned from their past. They know the cost, and they won't pay it unless they have no other choice. Another counselor leaned forward, her expression wary. And what do you propose we do? Trust that they'll stay on their planet? Wait until they build an empire and crush us in the future? No, Zeeker said. We open a dialogue. We show them we're capable of more than fear and violence. If we treat them as enemies, they will become enemies. But if we extend a hand, the room filled with murmurs of dissent and uncertainty. Yet, for the first time, Zeeker saw something else in their faces, a glimmer of hope. The Council's decision wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. An envoy was sent to Earth under a banner of peace, carrying a single message: we seek understanding. When the humans responded, it wasn't with weapons but with words. Their representative, a tall figure with piercing eyes and a calm demeanor, delivered a simple reply. We remember what war brings. If you seek peace, so do we. But know this: we will never let fear define us again. It was the beginning of something fragile, something unprecedented. And as Zeeker watched the envoy's ship disappear into hyperspace, he allowed himself to believe, for the first time, that perhaps, just perhaps, humanity's awakening could be the galaxy's second chance. The envoy's return brought cautious optimism to the Dominion. The humans had not only agreed to talks, but proposed a neutral location for future discussions, a station orbiting a nearby barren moon, far enough from Earth to ease tensions, but close enough to signal trust. Zeeker was among those chosen to represent the Dominion at the first summit. As he boarded the delegation ship, he couldn't shake the weight of what lay ahead. It wasn't just the future of relations with the humans at stake. It was the fate of the galaxy. If diplomacy failed, war would be inevitable, and no one would emerge unscathed. The station was an old interstellar relay hub, long abandoned and forgotten by most civilizations. Yet the humans had somehow restored its systems within days, transforming it into a functional meeting ground. The efficiency was unnerving, a reminder of their relentless adaptability. When Zeker and the delegation arrived, the humans were already waiting. Their representative introduced himself simply as Major Elias Crane. He was calm, composed, and wore an expression that was neither hostile nor overly friendly, a carefully neutral mask that spoke of restraint and readiness in equal measure. "Welcome," Crane said, his voice steady. "We appreciate your willingness to come here." The talks began cautiously, both sides testing the waters with formalities and guarded pleasantries. The humans were direct in their concerns. They sought assurance that the Dominion would not repeat the mistakes of the past. They also made it clear that while they desired peace, they would not tolerate aggression. "We've learned what happens when fear drives decisions," Crane said during one heated exchange. "It leads to destruction of others, of ourselves. We won't allow it to happen again. Not to us, and not to anyone else." Zeker studied Crane carefully as he spoke. There was no arrogance in his tone, no hint of a desire for conquest. Instead, there was conviction, a belief that humanity's survival was tied to something greater than power alone. When it was Zeker's turn to speak, he chose his words carefully. "The Dominion has thrived by uniting diverse species under a common cause," he said. "But we've often relied on strength to maintain that unity. Perhaps it's time we consider another way, one that you, of all species, are uniquely positioned to teach us." Crane's expression softened slightly, the first crack in his guarded demeanor. "We're not looking to teach," he replied. "We're looking to learn." Together, the talks stretched over days, each session chipping away at centuries of mistrust and fear. The humans shared fragments of their history, accounts of wars that nearly wiped them out, of hard lessons learned in the aftermath. The Dominion, in turn, offered insights into its structure and philosophies, emphasizing the importance of cooperation. By the end of the summit, both sides had reached a tentative agreement, a formal pact of non-aggression, and an exchange of envoys to foster communication. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a beginning. As the Dominion delegation prepared to leave, Zeker found himself alone with Crane for a brief moment. "Do you think it'll last?" Zeker asked, his tone laden with doubt. Crane smiled faintly, a hint of weariness in his eyes. "That depends on whether we let fear dictate our choices. But if we don't try, we'll never know." Zeker nodded, the weight of those words settling over him. As their ship departed the station and the humans faded into the distance, he allowed himself a rare moment of hope. Humanity had awakened, not as conquerors or victims, but as something more complex, something the galaxy had yet to fully understand. And perhaps, just perhaps, that understanding could mark the start of a new chapter for them all.